So, restoring men in history. This is a fantastic commencement speech on what? Masculinity, manliness, motherhood, so valuable and important to America always. Place kicker, Kansas City Chiefs, Harrison Butker, gave this phenomenal speech right before Mother's Day, so you understand the context, at a Catholic college. And let's get into it. As you can see, we'll just play the very beginning now.
Ladies and gentlemen of the class of 2024, I would like to start off by congratulating all of you for successfully making it to this achievement today. I'm sure your high school graduation was not what you had imagined, and most likely, neither was your first couple years of college. By making it to this moment through all the adversity thrown your way from COVID, I hope you learned the important lessons that suffering in this life is only temporary. As a group, you witnessed firsthand how bad leaders who don't stay in their lane can have a negative impact on society. It is through this lens that I want to take stock of how we got to where we are and where we want to go as citizens and, yes, as Catholics.
So right away, he's talking to Catholics now, and he's giving you a temporal versus eternal perspective, right? So suffering down here is very short and temporary compared to eternal life. Right? So that's the first point. Where are you trying to get to as citizens? Where's your citizenship going to be? On earth forever or in heaven? What he's saying, right? If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. So right away, he's going to important, and we believe in this, how important leadership is, and especially we talk about servant leadership at Restoring Men in History, right? And we've had bad policies, bad leaders. They were in place during COVID, as you saw it.
So I asked him, I said, so Dr. Redfield, can you tell me, can I get an example of the science and the studies that the CDC used to make that social distancing 6 feet, etc.? What he said, science, there was no science. We made it up.
Is spelling out the significant toll on kids' mental health that those lockdown policies have had, and accusing the CDC of burying the harm done by lockdowns to teens.
At night, the echoes of people crying out from their windows for help.
Unconstitutional agencies driving further bad policies and unconstitutional acts coming from Congress. And leadership has been affecting us for a very long time. Taking away from your freedoms, destroying freedom. It's about not having a servant leadership mindset, and you can see it in Washington, D.C. There's just not a servant leadership mindset for most of the people up there, right? Or they wouldn't spend $37 trillion, right? That takes away. The larger the government is, the less freedom you have. The more bureaucracies are, the less freedom you have, the more regulations. But let's go on to his speech. The debt, the spending, bad leadership has led us to what? 37 trillion, wars, Ukraine, the uniparty, big open borders, right? So let's go on. Leaders looking out for themselves, many of them, not you. All right, if he goes on, we'll play the video again.
While COVID might have played a large role throughout your formative years, it is not unique. Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues. Things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values in media, all stem from the pervasiveness of disorder.
So he calls it out, right? He's not afraid to take a stand. He's certainly speaking his mind. He's a famous person, a place kicker. Degenerate cultural values in media. Now, we talk about this a lot. This is important. And in general, bad institutions indoctrinating people. In general, teaching and injecting people with the bad cultural values. Now, we have to play this clip for you, ladies and gentlemen, because this is a good clip. Because he has the boldness to call this out right in front of the school.
Our own nation is led by a man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross during a pro-abortion rally. He has been so vocal in his support for the murder of innocent babies that I'm sure to many people, it appears that you can be both Catholic and pro-choice. He is not alone. From the man behind the COVID lockdowns to the people pushing dangerous gender ideologies onto the youth of America, they all have a glaring thing in common. They are Catholic. This is an important reminder that being Catholic alone doesn't cut it.
So he's talking about all these leaders who are Catholic, and we're not singling out Catholics today. He's talking about it. And you can't just say you're a Catholic, is what he's saying. Just like you can't just say you're a constitutionalist, or if being a Catholic doesn't apply to you, a Methodist, or whatever you are, or a constitutionalist, or a conservative, or whatever it is you are, what do you have to do? You have to be it, right? You have to be not afraid to speak your mind and call out the leadership at the top and live that way. Dangerous gender ideologies, he was bold enough to take this on. People aren't going to like that, and they've already been criticized. He had the courage to call that out, and we talk about that. And then he talks about those are the sorts of things you're told not in polite society to bring it up. We have to bring it up, ladies. Gentlemen and ladies, we have to bring it up. The difficult and unpleasant things, if we don't bring it up as constitutionalists, as conservatives, as Catholics, as whatever you are, and whatever you believe in, we don't stand for the things we believe in and bring them up, we will lose our society and our country and our ideas. Men right now have to do that. We have to bring things up peacefully, or we will lose our country and our society. So he goes on to say, as members of the church founded by Jesus Christ, it's his duty and privilege to be authentically and unapologetically Catholic. Again, you can apply that to being a conservative, a constitutionalist. If you believe in it, be it. Right? And don't remain silent. Here's the key thing. We cannot remain silent. Look at all that's going on in the world and the chaos. Men, ladies, we cannot be silent. Can't be silent about all this. You have to speak up peacefully for the Constitution. Speak up peacefully for this nation. Speak up peacefully for what we believe in and the ideas and American principles that we believe in. We must not remain silent and not adopt their language. Let me add one thing. Some factions in the left actually want you to adopt pronouns and adopt their crazy language. We can't do that either. So they're not even happy enough with you remaining silent. There's factions that want to shut you all the way down, and there's the factions that want to make you adopt to their ways, adopt to their language, and we cannot do that. We must stand against that language and not let them control the language. And Marxists want to do that. Let's keep going. We're not taking on the pronouns. So he talks about this film called Silence. I haven't seen it, but he said it was made by a fellow Catholic, wherein one of the main characters, a Jesuit preacher, abandoned the church and as apostate when he died is seen as grasping a crucifix, quiet and unknown to anyone but God. A friend of Benedictine College, His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron, said in his review of the film, it was exactly what the cultural elite want to see in Christianity. It's what they want to see you do if you believe in the Constitution. You're a constitutionalist. If you're a diehard conservative. If you're not a neocon. Look at the battle of the neocons. The neocons actually said, don't ask questions. Don't cut it down, right? Don't ask questions and we've got to go to war. We've got to go to war. We've got to go to war, right? So if you get out of the narrative and disagreement, we've got to stand up for what we believe in. Elite want to see in Christianity private, hidden away, and harmless. So they want you private, hidden away, and harmless. So he goes on to state Catholic faith has always been countercultural. I think many of us are now the counterculture, the conservatives, the constitutionalists. Certainly that's not informed. So this applies to many people out there watching, and men, toxic masculinity, attacked by that. Feminine women who just want to be homemakers and stay home, attacked by the feminists, right? So many of us are countercultural now to what the world wants, right? Be in the world, but not of the world is the quote. So, all right, the world around us says that we should keep our beliefs to ourselves whenever they go against the tyranny, and get this, and we don't like this much, diversity, equity, inclusion. And we need to stand up to that peacefully. Says we should keep our beliefs to ourselves whenever they go against the tyranny, and it is tyranny. That's a great word to use. We've used it up. Diversity, equity, inclusion. Tells you how to do business. Tells you whom you can hire. It's tyranny. We're for what? Come on over to the freedom side. We like freedom. We fear speaking truth because now, unfortunately, truth is of the minority. So true, right? We speak about speaking the truth, and you men need to speak the truth. Standing for the large ideas when we're talking about truths. Congress just passed a bill. Oh boy, this was dreadful, right? This is anti-constitutional, anti-freedom, anti-First Amendment, anti-free speech. And I've been meaning to do a whole video on this. It's a terrible bill, that anti-Semitism bill, where something as basic as teaching the biblical teaching. It's not even defined when you read the bill. It goes over to a certain Holocaust site to define it, and that definition can change. So anyway, as basic as the biblical teaching of who killed Jesus could land you in jail, he says. So The anti-freedom bill, the anti-tyranny bill, and we meant to do a video on this, so he happened to mention here, so we'll talk to it real quickly. Look, we're for the Constitution. If you're pro-Constitution and pro-freedom, the federal government has no enumerated power to restrict your free speech in that regard. It can't say don't talk about Christians. It can't say don't talk about certain groups. That's it. It doesn't have the enumerated power to do that at the federal level in the federal government, so it's unconstitutional. Freedom, so we don't like DEI, the Uniparty, and Republicans and Democrats, by the way, passed that anti-Semitism bill, right? Anti-free speech bill. Let's don't call it that. The anti-free speech bill, the anti-freedom bill. Congress does not have the power to shut down free speech, enumerated. All right, he goes on to say, let's fix our issues in the church and in our house first. That's right. You got to get good leaders, recruit big leaders. If we want to fix society, get the house in shape, he goes on to say, the bishops and the priest. We need priests who don't mislead the flocks, right? And he's saying, of course, again, because he's talking a lot, and we believe in free speech here, about priests being able to speak out, not being misleading you, but speak out to the truths that's going on in the world and don't say things that are normal. I'm paraphrasing, I'm adding to this. But I don't believe he wants priests that don't state the truth, okay? And then he goes on to say we must be intentional with our focus on our state in life and our vocation. So we've got to be disciplined and intentional as men, right? What do you want to do with your life? What's your purpose? What's your mission? What talents are you going to use? What's your vocation? And what's your focus? You got to be focused. And then he goes on to say this, and for most of us, that's as married men and women. So he's big on marriage. Here we go. And there are teachings to look to, he says, that you can research and find. Now, he goes on to COVID a little bit. And we've talked about the failures of most of the churches during COVID, making you wear masks or closing down altogether for so long. Look, all these churches closed down for a long time when people needed them the most. They needed the church the most. They needed community. They needed fellowship. That's the fellowship of the church. First Amendment, you have the right to assembly. Churches went along with it and they closed. I think it was out of fear, and he talks about fear, right? You can have fear or love for things. If they had enough love for the people, they may have opened, right? Then they started making people wear masks. So epic failure by the churches during COVID when people needed God the most, community the most, fellowship the most, and a place to go the most, and they were lonely and isolated. Chaos, he goes on to say this, the chaos of the world is unfortunately reflected in the chaos in our parishes and sadly in our cathedrals. Again, that's the churches too. Cultural Marxism also came into churches, not just the Catholic Church, Protestant churches, some of them, and got infected. So as we saw during the pandemic, too many bishops were not leaders at all. He's talking a lot about leadership here. And right, leadership was missing in government. In fact, it was horrific leadership in government, right? We don't want to get off here on it and go down this road, but look at what happened, the favoritism toward large business over small, shut down, isolating people, cutting them off, causing depression, and the health centers made it worse, right? Everything we told you, stay inside, don't walk, don't get vitamin C, don't get out in the sun, right? Don't get vitamin D, don't worry about vitamin D. All right. So that was an opportunity, right, for the churches to expose them to their world, and they missed it, most of them. They were motivated by fear of being sued, fear of being removed, fear of being disliked, and they shouldn't be concerned about being disliked by the world. Be in the world, but not of the world, right? So if you love the people and God, you might want to be open at that time. When the people needed you the most, you missed an opportunity. Needed community, needed fellowship. They showed their actions, intentional or unintentional, that the sacraments don't actually matter. He goes into the sacraments here, very important to him. He says you need to keep doing it. And there were other times when the priest kept doing it. He talks about countless people died alone, and that's true. People died alone. Couldn't get people. That was massive failure of the government. Massive. We don't want to forget it. It's a tragedy, and we must never forget. And these people at the school went through it, right? As Catholics, we can look to so many heroic shepherds who gave their lives for the people and ultimately the church. We cannot buy into the things into the lie that the things we experienced during COVID were appropriate, absolutely 100% inappropriate and horrific. Has been such destruction to this nation. How much money lost, how many jobs lost, how many people died, how many people committed suicide. The damage is enormous. We should never forget it. It's still going on today, and many, many people have not recovered. Over the centuries, there have been great wars, great famines, and even great diseases, all that came with a level of lethality and danger. Church leaders leaned into their vocation. So in this thing, we want you also as men to lean into your talents, lean into your potential. He's saying to lean in your vocation here and ensure that people receive their sacraments. So sacraments are very important to him. And he's saying when people need them the most, they fail. He talks about a leper colony that this guy went to, St. Damien, who knew the dangers of history, stayed for 11 years as a spiritual leader to the leper colonies of Hawaii. And his heroism is looked at today as something set apart and unique. For as a father loves his child, so a shepherd should love his spiritual children too. That even goes more for our bishops. So he's talking about leadership in the church. We're also talking about leadership in the government here, as well as he is. Look, you need good leadership. And this country needs better leadership. $37 trillion in debt and still wanting to go spend more in Ukraine. Crazy, right? Insanity. Just spend, but not fix our own border. So we have very bad leadership here. Our bishops once had adoring crowds of people kissing the rings and taking in every other word, but now relegate themselves to the position of inconsequential existence. All right, so they write these documents out. Today, our shepherds are far more concerned with keeping the doors open to the chancery than they are with saying the difficult stuff. So here again, talking about saying the difficult things as leaders. So as men, as the priest, say the things that your congregation or your fellowship needs to hear. Again, leadership and speaking out. Whereas bishops need to be vocal about the teachings of the church, setting aside their own personal comfort and embracing the cross. So their cross. So our bishops are not politicians, but shepherds. So instead of, this is a huge point, of fitting in the world, going along to get along, they need to stay in their lane and lead, he's saying. So lead, right? You may upset the world, but be in the world, not of the world, right? You may upset the world to take a bold stance, to even standing for the 10th Amendment, the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Constitution. Could upset many people that don't like the Constitution, but we have to stand for the Constitution. And we have to stand for virtues. Talk about being a better father and husband, staying in the lane. He talks about that. He a lot about father and that. So let's keep going. All right, being locked in your vocation, staying in your lane, is the surest way, he says, for you to find true happiness and peace in this life. And we want you, men and ladies, to find happiness and peace in this life. How do you do that, he's saying? Well, we usually say purpose, but he's saying find your vocation, that's fine, and stay in your lane. So know your talents, know your potential. What do you want to do as a little boy? What do you want to do as a little girl? Or what can you do? We talk about purpose and mission a lot. Men need a mission, men need a purpose. He's going to tell you what? Your purpose can be a father and husband, right?
Lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you.
He says to the women, you have had the most diabolical lies told you. That's right, feminism has lied to women. Corporate agenda, feminist agenda. And listen to what he says here. We'll play a few seconds of it.
How many of you are sitting here now, about to cross this stage, and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world.
Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. Now remember, this is a day before Mother's Day, and mothers are important.
I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. I'm on this stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation. I'm beyond blessed with the many talents God has given me, but it cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker.
What's the title that he says is the most important of all? And that is of homemaker. So here we celebrate homemaker. Feminism has denigrated, feminism has attacked it. They've built up working women, they're fine. But they've attacked the mothers. They've attacked the homemakers. If you want to be a wife and stay home and be a homemaker, that should be celebrated. So let's give a round of applause. And we do need to applaud the title of homemaker and value it. So he's right here. This is a good speech, and I think it's a good lesson for young people going out that have been sold on titles. Materialism. Right, because we're talking about family and spiritualism versus materialism here. She's the primary educator to our children, so that helps defeat the Marxist indoctrination centers, right? If the mom's at home, that's a big win for the family, undoing some of that Marxist indoctrination at the school. She's the one who ensures what? That I never let football or my business become a distraction from that of what? Husband and father. So he's saying that's his priority. She knows me the best. Okay. And hopefully he says we'll both attain salvation. Again, he's got an eternalist perspective. I say all this because I've seen it firsthand how much happier someone can be when they disregard the outside noise and move closer to God. So he's talking about that. He says his wife has no regrets of being a homemaker. Oh, to the gentleman here. And I like how he uses gentleman. Part of what plagues our society is this lie that has been told to you men that you are not necessary. Now, we talk about this all the time. Let me say it here, clear. You men are necessary. You are important to society. You have a role to play, men. He goes on to say this, as men, we set the tone of the culture, 100%. Men set the tone of the culture. You're there to be leaders. And when that is absent, disorder, dysfunction, and chaos set in, right? Because what do we always say? Men bring order, right? Certain men can bring disorder, but anyway, you know what I'm getting at. The absence of men in the home is what plays a large role in the violence we see around the nation, right? Uninvolved, we've done a video on this, so we're not going to go in detail here, but uninvolved or absent fathers create huge issues, and we've gone through it, so I want to keep going. An absentee father's a problem, so both are problems, and there's a lot of them in the United States. We had the stats in another video. Other countries, I've knew this, do not have the same absentee father rates as we do in here in the U.S., and it correlates to violence, he says. Be unapologetic. Now, we agree with this. Be unapologetic in your masculinity, fighting against the cultural emasculation of men. This is a great part of this video, right?
Other countries do not have nearly the same absentee father rates as we find here in the U.S., and a correlation could be made in their drastically lower violence rates as well. Be unapologetic in your masculinity, fighting against the cultural emasculation of men. Do hard things. Never settle for what is easy. You might have a talent that you don't necessarily enjoy, but if it glorifies God, maybe you should lean into that over something that you might think suits you better.
One of the great parts. Do hard things. Never settle for what is easy. You might have a talent that you don't enjoy, but if it glorifies God, maybe you should lean into that, okay? Now, he goes into Latin, traditional Latin masses, TLM. He's been very vocal in his love and devotion to the TLM. Look, I think some Americans are yearning for traditions and want to return to traditions because that seems stable. So I think there's an attraction to traditions. He's into the traditional Latin Mass. And it means a lot to him. And he says through the TLM, he encountered order and began to pursue it in his own life. Aside from TLM itself, too many of our sacred traditions have been relegated to the things of the past, when in my parish, things such as Ember Days, days when we fast and pray are still adhered to. The TLM is so essential that I would challenge each of you to pick a place. So he's talking to Catholics here, and I think that's enough of that. Now, we like this, we say this a lot. What you must remember, and we're just about to do it in another video, is that in life is about doing the small things well. And we say this a lot. If you can do the small things well, what will happen? You'll gain confidence, and you'll get better at it, and you'll accomplish, and you'll move on to bigger tasks. Do the small things well. Then you can move on to larger tasks. And you want to be around, we say this all the time, who do we want you to pick as friends? Be around the best people you can be. Be around people that push you to be the best version of yourself, right? We used to talk about the average of the 5 people you hang around most. Pick people that agree with your values and virtues, right? And pick a girl, he goes on to say. 2, we want you to have great friends that cheer for you too when you reach success, push you to be your best. And deep friendships, real fellowship with friends.
I say this all the time, that iron sharpens iron. It's a great reminder that those closest to us should be making us better. If you are dating someone who doesn't even share your faith, how do you expect that person to help you become a saint? If your friend group is filled with people who only think about what you're doing next weekend and are not willing to have those difficult conversations, how can they help sharpen you?
And here's good dating advice. If you're dating a girl and she doesn't even share your faith, how do you expect that person to help you become a saint in his verse? But how do you expect them to keep perfecting, reaching excellence if you're an Aristotle guy or something else? Got to find a girl that's with you on your values and virtues so you align, and your faith. That's important. Need to be same faith, same values, same virtues so you grow together, right? And so that she makes you stronger and you make her stronger as a leader. And we want you to have deep friendships. You're entering into mission territory in a post-God world, but you were made for this. And with God by your side and a constant striving for virtue within your vocation, you can be a saint. He ends with, what does he end with? Take a guess. What do you think he ends with? Christ is King, which of course has been under attack lately. Christ is King. So, you men are important to society. You fathers are important to society. You need to speak the truth peacefully wherever you go, men. You need to lead the families. You need to be involved. He's got a lot in here. Traditional Latin Mass he likes. Traditions are important. Ladies are important. Homemakers are incredibly valuable. Happy Mother's Day. And ladies are important. Families are important. By the way, we've got a population problem, so we do need more babies from American citizens. He's exalting mothers, and we need them. He's exalting homemakers, and we need them. He's also saying, don't listen to the newsfeed men. We need you in society. So we need men, we need women, we need society. We can make each other better. We can enrich each other. We need men in society. We need women in society. We need mothers. We need homemakers. And that's it. Thank you, and have a magnificent day. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe.